Hello and welcome to the Three Techs. I'm your host, Tony Tang, and joining me tonight is Stephen Bramson. Hey, Stephen.
Hi there.
And Bob Fairbairn. Hey, Bob.
Good evening, guys.
You know, one of the biggest challenges of producing a show is getting everybody together at the same time. Physically getting together and setting up the gear to film a show was becoming too difficult with our busy schedules. So we created this remote filming system that we can use to produce shows without having to physically get together and travel. Many of you have asked how we set this up from an equipment and configuration perspective. And in this show, we thought we'd take you behind the scenes and show you how we do it. This is the master control for the show. We have a 75-inch TV in the back here, which is connected to a Mac Pro underneath this desk. I also have the RØDECaster Pro, which handles all of the audio for my local microphones, and also it provides my monitoring, which I have a wireless earphone that I use, and I use CleanFeed, and you can see that we have our three participants there listed in CleanFeed. So CleanFeed is what we use for conferencing, for the audio, and also to get that into the RØDECaster Pro. I just choose the RØDECaster Pro as the stereo input and go into CleanFeed. The other thing that we do is that we also use overhead cameras sometimes. So when we've done some of those RØDECaster demos, I had an overhead camera, and that goes into the Mac Pro as well, into QuickTime. The easiest overhead camera that I found is just to use an iPhone. And that iPhone is connected through a Lightning to USB cable. And in QuickTime Player, you can just go to New Movie Recording and choose your iPhone as the input source. Now I needed to get a clean video signal out of that overhead iPhone camera, so I'm using an app called FiLMiC Pro. And FiLMiC Pro allows you to tap the screen and remove all of the display information so that the output coming from it into QuickTime is completely clean. So I use that to record the overhead camera. I also use QuickTime to record the entire screen on the Mac. So that's how you get the recording of this entire display that you're seeing on the TV behind me. In addition to that, we also have the Red Gemini recording this main view that you're seeing here of the master control set here. So I also have some other things that make this work, and one of the things that I did that makes it a lot easier to set up is automating the lights using Siri. So I can say, "Hey Siri, work lights on." So this is what it normally looks like in the room when I don't have the studio lighting set up. So when it's time to do a show, all I have to say is, "Hey Siri, it's time for the Three Techs." So Siri automatically turns on the two light panels that I have mounted on the ceiling, and also the Fresnel light that I have back there, as well as the LED panels that I have on the wall back there. It also turns on this TV behind me, which is HomeKit enabled, and sets it to the correct HDMI input, which is connected to the Mac Pro that displays the image up there. So that makes it a whole lot easier to get set up for a show because I don't have to go around turning lights on and off just to start recording. So that's the equipment that we use in the software. Let's talk about how we actually start up the show. So since I'm the master control, I need to go into CleanFeed, and I need to start up my CleanFeed studio in order for the others to join. So I usually bring that up first so that we can all hear each other. Now we all have a unique link that we use to join into the CleanFeed, and I have a calendar event that I invited both Stephen and Bob. They just click that link and it automatically opens up in CleanFeed. Now once they join, we can all hear and talk to each other, so then we'll usually bring up the video conference next. And for the video conference, we've used tools like FaceTime, and today we're using Zoom. So we're just using Zoom for video, we're not actually using Zoom for audio, but that's how we're getting the video to display there. And the screen recording that I'm doing is capturing the video as well, so I can use a multi-camera edit in post to cut between different camera angles. You can also use the recording function in Zoom to create a video recording if you wanted to use that as well for editing and post. Once we have everything going there, Bob and Steven both have to do setup on their side. So Bob, I was wondering if you could talk a bit about how you get set up for a show in your remote recording studio there.
Here's the system that I use. I have a Mac in my office that I use for most of the work and an iPad Pro. The Mac does the audio using CleanFeed, and then I have a boom mic and the audio interface on the boom mic for that, and video is done on the iPad. My setup is really simple. In addition to that, I also use a few hue lights, and I just set those up using the Home app. And so my setup happens actually pretty quickly. I can be up and running in about 3 or 4 minutes. So works real well.
Yeah, that sounds really clean and simple, Bob. How about you, Steven? What do you use?
I'm aiming to use a single device, and that device is a MacBook Pro. For audio, I'm using a Focusrite Scarlett Solo. So that takes a microphone input and creates a USB output to go into the MacBook Pro. The microphone is a Shure SM7B. That's a microphone we've talked about on our recent shows. And then just a simple pair of Shure earbuds for listening. The video, I'm using a Panasonic GH4 camera. The one setting on there is just to set it to clean HDMI so you don't see all the information display. And the lens today is a Panasonic 12-35 f2.8 zoom. That's set to 35, which is 70 millimeters equivalent for full frame. And to translate the video HDMI output to USB in for the Mac, I'm using a Magwell USB Capture HDMI Plus.
Okay, and you could be using the webcam in your MacBook Pro, right? But you just chose to use the Magwell with the GH4 to get a different angle of view and shallower depth of field.
Yeah, so the thing I like about using a dedicated camera for this is that, yeah, I could use a longer focal length, just get me with less annoying background and a little shallower depth of field.
Well, that sounds great. So you're on one device, Steven, and you're using an external camera for your video.
Yeah.
Got that Shure SM7B with the Scarlett USB interface. Fairly similar setup to Bob, other than Bob, you're using your iPad as your video camera, essentially.
Correct.
So that was a look behind the scenes of how we record the Three Techs. Again, this is master control here. All the recording happens here, so I don't have to gather any recording files from Bob or Steven, other than maybe some B-roll footage that they might send me of their equipment, which I'll then integrate into the show. I hope you found this show interesting and helpful for you to produce your own remote shows. Let us know what questions you have that we didn't answer. Put a comment down below, subscribe, ring that bell, like, and we'll talk to you next time on the Three Techs.
Only some of the devices in the Three Techs responded. You may want to check on them.
You've got a bolshy British Siri who's not obeying.
Yeah.